All yours. And I did turn up the
All
light
right.
on the screen. Can you guys see that okay? All right. I did turn the light up on the LED projector.
Okay, so I did a brief history of notorious computer viruses. A computer virus passes from computer to computer like a biological virus passes from person to person. Before the 80s, home computers weren't really the norm, and real computers were rare and were really only used in governmental and research facilities. During the 80s, personal computers started to spread to businesses and homes because of the popularity of IBM and Macintosh. And by the late 80s, PCs were in businesses, homes, and schools. With increasing popularity and evolution of personal computers and networks, computer viruses have evolved alongside them. Some may be harmless annoyances, but others have proven to be much more destructive and malicious. A macrovirus is a computer virus that infects Microsoft Word or similar application and causes actions to be performed automatically when the application is started or triggered in a different way. The macrovirus is often spread through email, and one of the first viruses to catch the eye of the public was actually named the Melissa virus. And that was in 1999. A man named David L. Smith programmed the virus, and it enticed recipients to open a document with an email titled something similar to, "Here is that document you asked for." Once the user opens it, it's activated, and the virus replicates itself and sends itself out to the top 50 people in their address list. It didn't destroy files or resources, but it had the potential to disable email servers. And the government became involved, and according to the FBI, the Melissa virus wreaked havoc on government and private networks. And on March 26th, it caused Microsoft Corporation to shut down incoming email. Intel and other companies also reported being affected. And the increase in emails forced some companies to have to stop their email programs until the virus was contained. And this is a picture of an example of what the email might have looked like. Part of it's in German, but it didn't do a whole lot of damage ultimately, but it was one of the first computer viruses that got the public's attention. And you can see up there, it says, "Here's that document you asked for. Don't show anyone else." And once you click that doc file, it activates the virus. The second one I'm going to talk about was called the I Love You worm. And that was a year later in 2000. It was developed out of the Philippines, and it was a standalone program. It was able to replicate itself without being activated. And it initially traveled by email. So the subject of the email said that the message was a love letter from a secret admirer. And the file contained a malicious program that overwrote users' files, and it had the file name loveletterforyou.txt.vbs. And the VBS is Visual Basic Scripting, and that's the language the hacker used to create the worm. It would copy itself several times and hide the copies in folders. It would add new files to the user's registry keys, replace several different kinds of files with copies, and it downloaded a file called winbugsfix.exe. And when that was executed, it could steal passwords, gain personal information, and then it would send it to the hacker's email. Some think a man named Onel de Guzman created the worm, but due to lack of evidence and the fact that there were no computer sabotage laws at the time in the Philippines, they had to drop the charges. But it did cause an estimated $10 billion in damage. And it took only a few hours for the worm to spread around the globe. And this was partly because it played on emotion, the desire to be loved, and some considered it the first socially engineered virus. In January 2003, a web server virus called SQL Slammer, also known as Sapphire virus, spread across the internet. Networks were unprepared, and the virus brought down several important systems. Pizza.
Sit right up here on the table, that'd be awesome. Right there. Appreciate it. Merry Christmas.
Okay. The Slammer virus brought down some important systems, such as a nuclear power plant in Ohio, the Bank of America's ATM service, 911 service outage in Seattle, and Continental Airlines had some problems with electronic ticketing and things of that sort. And this was estimated to more than $1 billion in damages before patches and antivirus were able to catch up with it and help solve the problem. It worked by releasing network packets to do a denial of service attack and bring internet on many servers to a halt. A few minutes after infecting its first internet server, the virus was doubling its number of victims every few seconds, and 15 minutes after the first attack, it infected nearly half of the servers that at the time were considered pillars of the internet. The storm worm in 2006 was identified as a Trojan. Some versions would turn computers into zombies, and the hackers would have their own botnet. As computers became infected, they became vulnerable to remote control. Many versions would try to trick the user into downloading the application through fake links to news stories or videos, like breaking news, storm wipes out, 3,000 in Europe. And when you click on the link, that would activate the worm. The people behind the attacks would often change the subject of the email to reflect current events. So it could be anything. It wasn't just one, storm or whatever. It could be anything related to news and in fact, I'm not sure, but I don't know if it was just news articles or if they could put it in pretty much anything, but I think that was what was most common. And several news agencies named the storm worm one of the worst virus attacks in years. The Conficker worm was in 2009. It infected millions of PCs around the world, and it also created a botnet, a remotely controlled computer similar to the storm worm. And zombie bots were capable of stealing financial data and other information, but supposedly they never did. Its complexity made it difficult to control, and people really were collaborating, trying to figure out how to stop it from spreading. But at its height, it infected millions of computers, and it was leading antivirus researchers to call it the superbug or superworm. But the real mystery is that no one knows what it was actually meant to do. The botnet army was never used for a specific purpose that they could figure out, and it still puzzles experts. Would you agree on that, or is that? It didn't. Okay. Yeah, because I thought that was kind of bizarre, but I didn't I had a couple sources that said that, but I wasn't sure if that was still the case, that they hadn't figured it out. And then the last one I'm going to talk about is Stuxnet, which is the most recent, I think that a lot of people heard about. And that was in 2010. And it was the first computer virus designed specifically to cause real damage as opposed to virtual damage. And previous programs could, you know, cause secondary physical problems like the 911 outage or, you know, but this targeted software that controls industrial systems. And it was designed to damage machinery at Iran's uranium enrichment facilities. It caused a large number of Iran's nuclear centrifuges, which are essentially giant washing machines used to enrich uranium. They would spin out of control and self-destruct. And it was reported that the virus ruined almost 1/5 of Iran's nuclear centrifuges. And although this has never been confirmed openly, anonymous U.S. officials have spoken out to the Washington Post, claiming that the worm was developed under the administration of Barack Obama to sabotage Iran's nuclear program with what would seem like a long series of unfortunate accidents. So, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's huge, you know. Right. It makes sense that it would be, you know. And although there have been and will continue to be other viruses that will make headlines, these 5 mark significant evolutionary trends among the pool of endless viruses come and gone. They serve as a reminder of how fragile our technology can be to anyone with a sinister agenda. But they also teach us how to overcome security flaws and to continue development towards a safer and more secure network. And that's the end. Sure.
Antivirus, as far as what do you recommend, like you personally, for antivirus, what do you use?
Well, I used to use AVG, but I recently did research on the latest top free antivirus, and there was one called Panda Free. I did some research on that, and I downloaded it, and I love it so far. It's not as obnoxious. You don't get the pop-ups all the time, you know. And it doesn't prompt you all the time to buy the full version, that sort of stuff. It just runs in the background. It's nice, works. So thanks.
Help yourself to pizza and what you guys brought for drinks real quick, and dig in real quick. Get a large pizza finished up. All right.
Do I have to turn this off or?
All right, go ahead and help yourself to pizza. Good job. And then just submit your paper to this week when you get a chance. All right, cool, awesome.